Great to see all of you. Welcome to the room. We will be starting very shortly. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Come on into the room. So good to see all of you. We are just letting a few more individuals into the room, and we'll begin in just a moment. Okay, let's begin. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. So great to see all of you today. Today in Dance Immersion's first online Bantaba and check-in for 2021, we will be delving in, to mental health resources for Black Canadians during the pandemic, practical strategies, and so much more. And we're going to be doing it with a wonderful speaker, Geneviève Allow. I'm so thrilled to be sitting down with her. For those of you I've not had an opportunity to meet, I'll be your moderator this evening. My name is Nicole Inika Hamilton, and let's talk tonight. In addition to those practical strategies, we're going to be talking about how we're feeling in this season, including embodying those feelings. How are we doing that? Whether we are in artistic platforms or not, it is so important for us to really start to begin to have deeper conversations with regards to our own mental health. And we want to talk about both the helpful and the unhelpful coping mechanisms that might be hindering our well-being. So as many within our community and across Canada are opening up today for Bell Let's Talk Day, we know that combating stigmas surrounding mental illness and talking about it openly it's a challenge for many of us. Is it fair to say? Is that fair to say? Thank you for those nods. It really is. It is a challenge for many of us to have those conversations. So today, we're really hoping that this conversation will look differently than it has in other spaces. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dance Immersion greatly for creating a space for us to have conversations like this one. And we're hoping that in addition to taking a deeper look, that we'll be able to look at how we're approaching our own self-care and the discussion of mental health. So again, Geneviève Allow will be sitting down with us today. Get excited, folks, because I am. After Geneviève's presentation, there's going to be a Q&A, and we invite you to share your thoughts and your questions at that time. And we also ask during the presentation if you can kindly keep yourselves on mute. That will help us quite a lot, just so we can make sure that there is no outside sounds. And at this time, I would like to introduce the wonderful founder of Dance Immersion, Vivian Scarlett.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm coming through. Yes, good evening, everybody, and welcome. I want to first give thanks for the many blessings that has enabled us to gather here, knowing that we are all healthy and safe. I want to give thanks to the ancestors for the path they have paved and the protection and guidance they continue to offer as we continue to journey forward. And we give thanks to each other, knowing that we can only do what we're doing with each other. And this land is the territory of the Huron, Wendat, and Petun nations, the Seneca, and mostly recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit. The territory was a subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and all allied nations to peacefully care and share for the resources around the Great Lakes. The meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful for the opportunity to share space with our First Nations people of this territory. I would like to acknowledge that we are all treaty peoples, including those of us who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic trade slave. We acknowledge the Creator, we acknowledge the land, we acknowledge each other as we move forward into night. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Vivian. Thank you for that welcome. Going to pass now to Tamia Wharton-Surrey.
Thank you. Yes, I am Dance Immersion's program director, and I want to welcome you all and thank you for sharing this space with us. I want to also thank Dance Immersion's funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, Department of Canadian Heritage, Ontario Arts Council, and Toronto Arts Council. We also want to thank our individual donors and some private donor organizations like Metcalf Foundation, Toronto Foundation, and the Toronto Dance Community Lovin'. Without all of your support, we couldn't do programs like this. The Bantaba are free platforms for us to get together, to learn, to share, and most of all, support one another in a safe space. So I thank you all for that. Dance Immersion wanted to focus on mental health because, as we all know, during the pandemic, we are experiencing different forms of loss, of separation, at different levels, at different times, and it can feel relentless as we continue with the shutdown. And so we want to connect with you more and let you know that there are resources out there, and that if you are suffering in any way or you know someone who is, you don't have to stay suffering in silence. And as I said, it's a space for sharing. As Nicole mentioned, you can ask questions. You can post your questions in the chat, or if you'd rather remain fully anonymous, I've pasted my email address, timia@danceimmersion.ca, into the top of the chat. So you can email your question to me during this event, and I will ask it without identifying you. So there's those two options there. So thank you all again, and I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
Thank you, Tamia. Thanks very much. And welcome again to all of you who are just joining us. I have to say, I'm so thrilled to sit down with all of you and have this conversation. I get very excited when we have an opportunity to talk about mental health. And especially given the fact that there are so many factors that are involved, and many times it feels unsafe to do so. So thank you again to Dance Immersion for creating this space. So let's get to know our speaker for this evening. Today, we're pleased to welcome Geneviève Allow, who is passionate about journeying with those going through challenging life circumstances. And she's committed to the change process. And that is those real life changes, folks, that take time and attention. Geneviève is the founder of Corner Counselor, which provides affordable, accessible, and appropriate one-on-one sessions, community courses, and group workshops as well in underserved neighborhoods, pardon me. And Corner Counselor is also a mentoring and launching platform for newly registered therapists. And I also wanted to share with you, which I thought was really interesting to learn about Geneviève, because we're talking about our self-care as well, that self-care for Geneviève pre-COVID included reading and traveling, writing, exercising, and going to the theater. And these days she finds joy in nature walks. I love that you've shared that, Geneviève. Intentional showers as well, journaling, and DIY projects at home. Let's do it yourself projects at home. Please, please join me in welcoming the absolutely wonderful Geneviève Allow to today's session. Welcome, Geneviève.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. And thank you for that very warm welcome. And thank you also for just the decree and just the way in which we've honored our guests here this evening. As I listened to Vivine and Timea, and I, I, I I almost got the sense that I was entering into, as well as being welcomed and invited into, a sacred space. And I thought, wow, okay, this is nice. This is nice. It feels calm, and it feels comforting. It's like a hug. I feel like you gave me a hug with that introduction. So thank you guys for that. Um, and sometimes we can lose that when we, sort of have to interact through screens. And so I wanted to make that explicit, that I really did feel the warmth coming through. Um, Again, it's great to be here today discussing and talking about a very important topic, mental health, and especially on today, which is Bellette's Talk Day, where all of our interactions online and through social media provide funding for Canadian mental health initiatives. So that's pretty awesome to be a part of as well. Um, so maybe I'll sort of go over what we want to do this evening. Okay, so really we're just talking about building awareness, talking about mental health issues, and sort of how to identify where we ourselves are at. And then also looking at what has brought us to this place. Okay, how we're sort of feeling, right? What has brought us, the components, the contributing factors. And then we'll get into a few sort of practical ways of building up our own self-care regimen, sort of addressing some of the ways in which we feel we've endured losses, and as well as sort of challenging ourselves to think differently as we go forward. So reimagining, rebuilding, brainstorming, all that good kind of stuff as we transition from the old into the new. And some of that might be familiar for you, some of it may be new to you, but either way, we'll sort of wrestle with it together. Okay. So maybe what I'll sort of start with is um, the the reference that Tamia made to the losses. And if we're honest with ourselves, if we're honest with ourselves, we have been through a whole lot, right? I mean, we're coming into 2021, we're getting into the first month. We've had pretty much a year of lockdown, of constant updates in the news as it pertains to the new cases and the deaths and and all of it. Like, we've been through a whole lot just as it relates to this pandemic and having to follow regulations that keep us isolated, that prevent us from interacting in ways that we are used to and that we have enjoyed. And then, you know, as a Black woman, and many of you being from the Black community yourselves, there is an added piece, of course, as we have watched and had to sort of um, interact, let's say, with the commentaries and the dialogue on racial injustice, and escalating racial injustice in the States, or perhaps escalating broadcast. Um, so not escalating in terms of numbers, but escalating in terms of the number of people that have access to seeing what's going on. Um, and so on that level, we too have sort of endured another um, loss, let's say. So all in all, we've been through a lot. And I think sometimes that a lot gets lost and we lose sight of, or perhaps we intentionally attempt not to look at how much it is we have had to endure throughout these challenging times. And so, um, part of how I grew up in a Afro-Caribbean household was that we didn't really talk about certain things. There were certain topics that were kind of off limits. And one of those topics had to do with loss and disappointment, um, and grief. And so I didn't grow up learning how to handle disappointment, how to handle grief, how to handle losing things, or how to even properly let go of things, and so on. So, when I sort of started in this field, it was sort of a new thing to grieve things. And I thought, well, it kind of makes sense. It's kind of, normal for us to go through loss as human beings. But to do it in a way that is intentional and to do it in a way that actually produces healing was foreign to me, was completely foreign to me. So I thought, you know, it's not really something that we like to talk about, so I'm going to talk about it. And so I thought, yeah, maybe we can sort of look at what it is we are feeling as it relates to or pertains to the losses that we have endured thus far. And, as dancers, most of you sort of looking at the industry and sort of thinking about what you've had to do in terms of transition. And I have friends who are also in the arts and so on. And so uh, gigs and auditions and just having the opportunity to work or to be engaged, studios are closed and we don't have the same access to one another. And a lot of us, and I'm an adopted creative, as I like to call myself. I like to be a part of the creative community. Um, but that means that I do love interacting with other people. I love the social aspect. I love the human aspect. I love the connection aspect. And a lot of that has been disallowed. A lot of that has been denied during this time of lockdown and transition. And so that's an area, and it may not be completely obvious to identify that as an area to intentionally grieve, but because it takes up so much of our humanity as well as so much of our time, it's important to recognize what's attached to those things, or attached to that whole loss of social and social interaction, so that we can properly let go of them and not get stuck. Um, and maybe I'll say something about that stuckness. Okay. So, we talk about denial and sort of suppressing or dismissing, or perhaps not fully facing what it is we are dealing with, right? And I like to say denial is a gift until it stops giving. And so now we're at the place where we're thinking, okay, how do we properly qualify and quantify the things that we feel we've had to let go of, either by force, um, and grieve them? How do we do that? Right. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring to our attention is that simply admitting brings us to a powerful place. And I'll say why. We cannot change, or we cannot heal from, we cannot address, we cannot confront, we can't really do anything with things that are remaining hidden, or things that we refuse to look at, things that we're not aware of, things that we're not conscious of. And so if we are unwilling to say to ourselves, okay, I used to be able to afford my rent downtown, and now I got to go move back home with my parents. If we cannot acknowledge that that is a place of pain for us, that might be a place of shame for us, and whatever kind of hurt is attached to that, then there's no room to grow. There's no room to go from there. So we have to come to a place where we're willing to say to ourselves, these are the losses that I've endured. This is what I felt I've had to let go of during this time. And so I'll sort of maybe say something about the admitting piece, right? Because we don't want to get stuck in the suppressing. So when we talk about admitting to ourselves what's going on, we have to sort of begin to acknowledge that we're in a new space and a new time. There are new challenges that we're facing that we didn't have to face before. And so, what got us here is not going to get us there, kind of thing, right? So we need something else. We need something more to address this new thing, right? So we're dealing with stuff, we're going on through life, and then all of a sudden something new happens, and we're like, whoa, COVID, whoa, pandemic, whoa, what's happening? Hold on. I thought I was doing okay. I thought all of the coping strategies that I had in place were good for me. I thought that all of the things that I used in, to soothe myself, or to, practically address my issues, or perhaps avoid them. I thought those were working, and now they're not. Now they're not anymore. So what do I do? Right? So I need some new things. I need to come up with some new strategies or some new coping mechanisms or some new ways of dealing with life. And our way of doing it is not enough. Comes with like a hard and fast, reality check. That's like, whoa, uh, I'm not doing anything wrong per se, but I don't have the tools to get me past this place. And that's a really difficult position to be in. And as a therapist, I see this and come into contact with this a lot. So how do we begin acknowledging that our coping strategies and the ways in which we've been thinking and believing and doing things are no longer serving us or functioning for us in the way that it did? How do we get to that place where we're willing to acknowledge that and willing to challenge that? And that's a really hard thing. So I wanted to sort of talk about that today. Sort of looking at what's been helpful, what's not been helpful, and really zoning in on our thinking styles, really zoning in on the ways in which we think about life or think our way through life. And, from Gandhi to Buddha to Jesus to great philosophers of the day, there's this constant and common theme that what happens in our minds is quite important for how we live our lives, how we think about life, how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, how we think about the world has great bearing upon how we live our lives, whether we can experience joy, whether we can enjoy, our satisfactory level of happiness, or whether we experience a consistent barrage of challenges, and whether we feel bogged down, weighed down, or torn down by life circumstances. So I wanted to sort of show you guys something and sort of go through this really quickly, um, in terms of how we think. Okay, so this is sort of the beginning level, maybe let's say, or the starting point. And some of these may be quite familiar to you, and some of them may be new to you. But what I will highlight is that these common ways of thinking lead us to psychological distress. And so, what we want to do is really be able to notice them, identify them, and call them by name. Okay, so as I go through these thinking styles, what I want to do is engage you all. Okay, so I want to engage you all in this way. As I go through them, I want you to take a moment each time, just through, I'll go through about 10 of them. Each time, I want you to just take a moment as you're listening to just breathe and think about where this may have shown up in your life. And in addition to that, if you sort of identify, oh, it showed up here, I want you to take a minute and check in with yourself and ask yourself, what did I experience as a result of thinking in this particular way? Okay, so just a quick check-in, and maybe I'll give an example. So you may experience an emotion. An emotion could be anything from aggravation to joy. You may experience something in your physical body. There may be a lump in your throat, or tightness in your chest, perhaps butterflies in your stomach. Um, and so I just want you to sort of check in and see, hey, what's happening? Okay. I can't see any of you, but if you throw like a thumbs up in like the picture thing, then I can see that you guys are hearing me and that you're ready. Is there a thumbs up for us? I see some thumbs up. Okay. Thumbs up. Great. Okay, so maybe I can just share this quickly. Um, and for those of you who are Zoom masters, if you cannot see this large on your screen, um, there's something you can do. I believe you can, I think Nicole knows the that could you let them know how to do that?
Sure, I'd be happy to help. So everyone, if you are not able to see it at the full size that you need to, up at the very top of your screen, you will see, if you push your mouse right up, you'll see that you are viewing Genevieve Allows screen. Right next to that, if you click on View Options and then go down to Zoom Ratio and click on that, then you can choose the option that you wish, whether that is 100%, 150%, or more. Thank you, Genevieve.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So we'll just go through these. I'll go through the first column and then the second one. And like I said, just check in with yourself. Okay. And these again are unhelpful ways of thinking, usually ending up or causing or producing or contributing to our psychological distress. Okay. So there's all or nothing thinking, which is the first one at the top there, and you'll see an X through the gray box and a black box on one side and the white box on the other side. This is quite often called black or white thinking, and it really sounds like this. If I'm not one thing, I'm another thing. If I'm not all of one thing, I'm all of another thing. So if I am not perfect, then I have failed. Or if I am not intelligent, then I am stupid. Or if I am not right, then I am wrong. Okay. And so we want to make sure that we're able to identify this way of thinking. Why? Because there is never an all of anything for us as human beings. And when we start to place ourselves in one box or the other, then we miss out on our opportunity to be dynamic. And when we do this for others, we also miss out on the opportunity to enjoy their dynamicness as human beings. And why does this cause distress? Because there's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to grow. There's nowhere to grow. And that means there's stuntedness or stuckness. And quite often, we feel stuck. We're like, well, what do I do? I do one thing or the other. Well, what are the options and the alternatives? What are the other things that you can consider? Right? And so we want to be able to identify when we are, and this is a very common way of thinking, right? And so when you're having this all or nothing thinking style, can you identify it? And so take a moment, just sort of think about yourselves and where this may have come up for you. I'll move on to the next one, which is called mental filtering. Mental filtering is paying attention to certain types of evidence. And this may be programmed within us because we've grown up in a particular context, a particular culture, a particular family. And we've learned that paying attention to a certain type of information either gets us approved of, gets us accepted, or perhaps we feel a certain way when we pay attention to that way of or that particular evidence. And this might look like noticing failures but not noticing your successes, being able to identify what has gone wrong but not being able to celebrate the small wins type of thing, right? And quite often we do that. Right? If we've grown up with, say, critical parenting, we may be able to identify when things have gone wrong or not gone our way. But we may miss, and this is the filter, right? We may miss when things are going greatly, when things are going our way. And it doesn't mean that things never go our way. It just means that we pay more attention to the thing that sort of supports our underlying belief system. Okay, and so we want to make sure, and this can go either way. Sometimes we notice all the successes and we don't notice the failures. Either way, we're skewed to one side of the continuum, and it doesn't allow for balance in our perspective. And that can be hindering to us as human beings, because again, we are dynamic, we are complex, and we are layered. Okay. The third one down there is jumping to conclusions. And this again, quite common. Very often we do this. The point here is to highlight them because again, we can't change what we cannot identify or we're not aware of. So the point here is to identify it, not to beat up on yourselves, not to say, oh man, I'm doing this thinking thing. No. Or this unhelpful thinking thing. No, this is an opportunity for us to identify what is going on so that we can then do something about it very consciously and very proactively. Okay. So jumping to conclusions, a very common automatic way of thinking. There's two types: mind reading, and we've probably heard this or heard ourselves say this a lot. We imagine we know what other people are thinking. Like, I'm not going to say anything because I know she's going to be angry. I know she's going to say this. I know he's going to say that. I'm just going to, all that kind of stuff. So that's mind reading. And we don't allow for ourselves then to be open to others, so expressing ourselves in an authentic way, and we don't give other people a chance. And that in and of itself really does quelch or dumb down, maybe that's not a good word. Um, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it sort of like shrinks. It shrinks our ability to engage with and to be a part of authentic relationship with others. And so what that actually really is us being unhuman, because we're created for a relationship, right? From the moment we were born, we have to, our parents give us, milk from the breast and that kind of thing. Like, we're created to be in relationship with others. We actually can't survive otherwise. Many studies have shown that if you put a baby in a dark room without interaction, they then will become blind and come out deaf and have lowered cognitive levels of understanding. Um, it's not human for us to be alone. And so this, or isolated. So this is something that prevents us then from connecting with other people, right? So we're reading their mind. We know what they're going to say. We know what they're going to do. We know at the end of the day, if we're aware of this, what we can do for ourselves and for others to give them a chance to be in relationship with us is ask a question. Okay. That one was free. I usually don't tell people that. Fortune telling is another way that we jump to conclusions. And that is like predicting the future. Like, oh man, I'm not going to apply for this job because, if I apply, they're not going to call me back for an interview, or they're going to call me for an interview and I'm going to go to the interview and I'm going to flunk out on the interview and they're not going to like me and they're not going to give me the job. And then we just keep it going, right? We're predicting the future. But again, that keeps us in a place where we're not allowed to live. We're not allowed to grow. We're not free. Right? Even as I said that, I felt like, oh my goodness, anxious. Even as that was just me giving an example and I felt it. Right? And so we want to make sure that we can attend to ourselves and care for ourselves and be kind and compassionate to ourselves while we identify these unhelpful ways of thinking. Emotional reasoning, another very common one, my goodness. We, especially those of us who didn't grow up in households where we were well learned in emotions, in dealing with emotions, in talking about emotions, in having conversations about emotions. So emotional reasoning, very common. It's when we take emotions or feelings and we depend on them or we use them as facts. So I feel embarrassed, so I must be an idiot. Like, I feel sad, so the world must be ending. I don't feel like doing something, so I can't do that thing. I don't feel like getting out of bed, so I can't get out of bed. Okay, so we've made the feeling the fact. And in reality, if we learn how to separate our feelings from our thoughts, then we can think a thing and feel a thing and still decide to do another thing altogether. Okay, so then it's not something that happens overnight. And here we're just talking about identifying things so that we can be aware. This is about building awareness of the things that can trip us up and the things that can hold us back and cause us more distress during this time. Okay, so this is not like, oh my goodness, life overhaul. Don't get overwhelmed, right? Just an opportunity to be aware. Okay, so emotional reasoning, we want to make sure that we're not calling feelings facts and we're calling facts facts and we're calling thoughts thoughts and we're calling emotions emotions. Okay. Labeling, another common one, we probably do this often, we stub our toe. Oh, I'm so stupid. We spill the milk. Oh, I'm so dumb. And we call ourselves names or we call others names and we call it labeling. And again, this is that all-encompassing thing. Like, he's a bad person, she's a good person. You're taking one thing and making it all of something. I'm a terrible person. We are so complex. We are layered, we are varied. Oh my goodness. And I love to say, we are more than just a human. We are so many parts of ourselves. Like, there's so many parts to us, right? And so part of us might enjoy corn dogs, part of us might enjoy chocolate, part of us might love to sing, part of us might love to play soccer. Like, we have so many parts of ourselves. And to label is to strip us of our parts. It is to take all of our parts and make it one thing. And again, there's no room to grow from that. Nobody can handle that, being all of one thing. And so this is a straight attack on identity when we do this, to ourselves or to others, because then we don't allow for ourselves to see others in all of their layers and all of their parts and pieces as well. And so the distress comes in when we do this thing that's quite contrary to our humanity, to our natural inclination. And so it's important for us to recognize when this is happening, so that, one, we'll be conscious of it, of course, but two, we can do something about it, right? We can act on it. We're aware, we can do something to change it. If we're not aware, if we're not conscious, we cannot do anything to change it. And it'll show up, and it'll show up like little niggly things to hijack our progress every single time. Okay. The next column there, there's 5 more. Overgeneralizing, that's a big one, seeing a pattern based upon a single event, or being overly broad with our conclusions. So, this might look like if you have gone to an audition and, they say, no, we're looking for someone else. Well, I'm a terrible dancer. Everything is terrible. Everything, right? We overgeneralize when, you went to 10 auditions before that and they were like, we love you, you know? So, it's sort of that uh, making it all of everything. Disqualifying the positive is just as it sounds. When the positive things happen in life, we tend to say, oh, it was because of luck, or, I just got lucky, or, they were looking for, I was the only Black girl there, or, they were looking for someone who, had dreadlocks in her hair and I was the only person there. It wasn't because I was good at anything. It wasn't because I'm qualified. It wasn't because I was capable. It wasn't because of anything that was on the inside of me. And so it's an inability and an aversion to validating and affirming the self. And that, my goodness, that's harmful. It is harmful. And funny enough, and I'll sort of stay on track because I can get off track. But funny enough, some of the things that we say to ourselves, we would never say these things to other people. We would never open our mouths and dare utter these words towards other people. And so I wonder, why wouldn't you say them to other people? Oh, because, they might feel a certain way. Well, don't you think you would feel that way when you say it to yourself? Right? So we have to become agents who are able to identify these very unhelpful ways of thinking about ourselves and the world. Magnification, catastrophizing, minimizing, again, very common. Catastrophizing is worst case scenario. We're already off to the races. The worst thing has happened. We hear one thing, we blow it completely out of proportion. I broke a nail. Oh my goodness, I'm going to die because you broke a nail. Yes, it could get infected and it could get sepsis and it could get this and I could get that. And then, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to the hospital. And then we're like, my goodness, how about I just broke a nail and I'm going to get clippers to clip it off? How about we leave it there, right? Because that creates less distress than catastrophizing. And minimizing is sort of the opposite of that, shrinking something to make it seem like it's less important. So that would be like, like half my arm is hanging off and I say something like, oh, I'm okay. everything's fine. I'm like bleeding and I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm all right. And quite often we do this with our emotional selves and we don't notice. And so something really, really hurtful happens and we say, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, whatever. Didn't bother me. No, it's fine. And we don't acknowledge the fact that we are hurting and we are wounded and we are in pain. And I'll say this again, you cannot change what you do not take a look at. If you do not want to be aware of it, you cannot change it. So you'll bleed out. And this is a figurative bleeding out. And so emotionally, some of us are bleeding out. Emotionally, some of us are so wounded and we will not seek the attending. The shoulds and the musts, very easy to identify and also very common. I should be this, I should be that, you must be this, you should be that, you should have done this for me. It's all about expectations of self and others, and quite often, most times leads to disappointment because we can't have expectations unless we have agreement. And most of us don't have agreements. And so we want to be able to identify when we're doing the should must thing. And we want to ask ourselves, like, is it really true that like I should know how to do everything in the whole world? Is it really true? Is it really true that I should be married at 23, that I should have had kids by now, that I should have been this, that I should have done that I shouldn't have done this when I was a kid, that I shouldn't, like, is it really true? Or was it just a part of life? And is it just a part of life that we have to learn how to navigate now? And then the last one is personalization, which again is quite common, blaming ourselves or taking responsibility for things that really do not belong to us, or blaming others for things that we ought to take responsibility for. And you know, this causes distress because again, it takes away our power, it takes away our autonomy, and it takes away our agency to actually do something that is proactive and that brings us out of our unsatisfying situation and into a more satisfying one. So I wonder, as you guys heard those, and maybe I'll do this really quickly, as you guys heard those, as I went through those and you listened to me speak, I saw a few smiles, a few chuckles, a few knowing nods. Um, but as you listened and you thought, my goodness, yeah, those are showing up for me. I wonder if anything else came to mind about what you would do to address when these come up. Right? These things come up. These are the ways that I'm thinking. Okay, so now what? Now what? Right? So what do we do? And so I'll sort of give this to you because this will be helpful for you as you move forward and as you continue to wrestle with loss and as you continue to grapple with all of the contributing factors to the angst that we have to sort of navigate right now. It's all about creativity. And most of you, if you guys are in dance immersion, have some kind of familiarity with creativity. Okay, we're dancers or artists and people, we're creative people. Again, I'm like adopted into the creative nation. Okay, I can't dance by the way at all, at all. But I'm adopted, so we're creative people, and so this is then about being creative. So how then do we come up with alternative ways of thinking that create less distress for us? If we're sort of seeing these ways of thinking show up, right? How do we move from staying stuck, like this is the way I'm thinking and this is, to what are the alternatives for me? What are the options that are available for me? What can I consider thinking instead of what I'm thinking? How do I move from one place to another? And that again is about challenging our way of thinking. And our way of thinking can be deeply ingrained. It can be culturally influenced, of course. It's based in our assumptions and our experience and our socialization process and all of that, all of those things. And you know, as we do the process, go through the process of unlearning and challenging some of what we've believed to be true, we can better be able to um, access some of those creative ways of building alternatives for ourselves. So for the ways of thinking, That's what I love. I'd love for you guys to take away this evening. And I want to challenge you to notice yourselves thinking in these ways. Notice what it brings up for you on the inside emotionally. Um, and then also challenge yourselves to create, be creative, and come up with alternatives. What would I rather be thinking here? What would be a better way of thinking about this thing? Is what I'm thinking really true? Is it based in reality? Is there another way for me to think about this thing, this interaction, this relationship, this outcome, this dot, 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 fill in the blank? Okay. And that is the I guess the insight oriented part of things. And I actually don't know how much time I have left, but I wanted to sort of touch on just some practical things. Am I good to go? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So we're sort of looking at how to navigate and so on. And we wanted to talk about the self-care aspect of things. And thank you so much for reading my self-care pieces. Um, and I'm not telling you anything that I don't do myself. I start from where I'm at because I don't think, one, it's authentic to share things that I wouldn't do myself or that I haven't proven to be effective. Um, and it's just, yeah, I mean, I sort of want to share with you what has been helpful for me throughout this time. And I'm going through it too. I might, be a therapist and I may support hundreds of people a month or what have you, and clients and so forth. But I'm going through it as well. Right. So I have to figure out, hey, how do I keep myself at optimal capacity while I also support others? And there's some really, simple and some not so simple things that I do. So I want to share those with you. So number one is make your space beautiful. We are at home, we're on lockdown and so on. Make your space beautiful and comfortable, or as comfortable as possible. So if you are in your room or in the living room or wherever you have a workspace, you're working from home, try to make it as beautiful as possible. I love do-it-yourself projects. I don't know if you guys can see the bookcase behind me. It's like a wall-to-wall bookcase, and there's like bricks going down each like column. I washed and spray painted and glued every single one of those bricks together. It was a labor of love. It took me months and months, but it was fun. And I said, I want to have a wall-to-wall bookcase, and so I'm going to make one for myself. Okay. And so that, for me, I know not everybody loves like do it yourself projects or what have you, but for me, it was joy producing. Every brick, I was like, yes, I'm making my bookshelf. I'm scrubbing these bricks. And people, some of my friends who knew that I was doing this, and, my cousin, they were like, really, Jen, you're going to wash all those bricks? And I said, yes, I am. Because I have a vision, and at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be able to look at my bookshelf and I'm going to smile every time I look at it. And when I know I know where all my books are. Okay. So that's just something very simple. And it doesn't have to be a bookcase. It could be a picture on the wall. It could be painting a wall your favorite color. It could be bringing, like you can see my Connect Four. I love board games. It could be bringing a Connect Four into your space so that it can remind you that life is not all bad or all heavy. We've got games that we can play. You know what I mean? So whatever sort of works for you, though, to make your space comfortable, make it beautiful, make it pleasant for yourself to be in, because you have to be there. We got to be here, right? We don't have a choice. And so, what do we do when something has been taken away from us? We make the most with what we have, right? So yeah, that's just sort of my thing. Make your space beautiful. Unplugging has been my lifesaver. Don't sit down in front of the news, people. Please do not. Don't take in every single update. Please do not take in every single broadcast. Please do not sit on social media for more than 5 hours a day, taking in conspiracy theories and news this and this, that, and politics that. And please do. I'm actually begging you not to do that. Unplug, unplug, and then plug in intentionally. And I say that because my third point is to laugh. I love to laugh. Right now, my mouth is crazy much in pain, and half my face is frozen because I've been going through oral surgery for the past like how many weeks. So my face is frozen and my teeth hurt, but I love to laugh, okay? And I will make sure that I find myself in front of a funny show, or I'll ask my friends to send me a funny video or a funny meme, or I'll pick up a comic. I know people don't really read comics anymore, but I will find whatever is for you that's going to produce that joy that bubbles up from the inside, that laughter. Whether it's a comedy show, Trevor Noah is hilarious. I love him. He'll make you laugh. So do what you got to do to laugh. Maybe you have a funny friend, give them a call. Maybe you have a funny sibling, go hang out in their room. Maybe your parents are hilarious with their old school jokes or their old school stories. Sit down and laugh with them. Laughter is like medicine for the soul. It's like I think you lose like I don't know 15 calories or something every time you have a good belly laugh. Like it's better than like cardio. So- laugh, like just laugh, right? It'll make you feel better. And if you can't laugh yet, smile. I know this sounds strange, but if you go to the mirror and you smile at yourself in the mirror, you'll find that the smile that you started with turns into a real one. I know it's very strange. Just try it. Just try it. So make your space beautiful. Unplug, laugh, unplug and plug in purposefully. Laugh intentionally, and then reflect. I say reflect because a lot of us don't like to look back. You know, we're so over this, so over 2020, so 2020 is canceled, and so on, whatever. So what I want to say is, when we reflect, we actually give ourselves the opportunity to take advantage of our future. Why? Because we get a sense of what happened. And again, we can't change things if we don't know what they are. And so we look back and we're like, okay, what were the things that happened in 2020? What did I do? How did I respond? What did I say? What did I feel? Right? All of that stuff. It's helpful to reflect on what has happened and how you responded, and then be able to ask yourself the question, like, how would I prefer to respond? How do I want to show up in my 2021? Right? How do I want to show up in this new relationship? How do I want to show up in this new career? How do I want to show up? Right? How did I show up in the past that I didn't like? That requires for you to reflect and to be honest with yourself. And quite often, what we don't like about reflecting is that we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to admit to ourselves, like, yeah, I didn't really show up there in the way that I really wanted to, kind of thing. But denial is a gift until it stops giving, and it's not your retirement plan. So please, um, I would admonish and invite you all to challenge the reflex that causes you not to want to reflect. Um, Reach out is another one. Um, I have this sort of saying, do something every day. I do something inside, do something outside, do something with someone else. And the reach out part is about doing something with someone else, or identifying that you just need extra support, identifying that you need help, right? And so reach out. I would say choose wisely who you reach out to, right? And if you are a spiritual person, you may reach out to your higher power, and you may pray, or whatever have you, or if you have a mentor, or a role model, or even our wonderful people ladies who introduced us this evening and who are hosting this dance immersion, Bantaba. Reach out to someone who can connect with you in a way that's real, that's authentic, that's non-judgmental, that is open, and that can hold up your stuff, like hold you as you walk through your stuff. Okay. And then, of course, have a routine for every day. Do something inside, do something outside, and do something with someone else. Um, I'm sure you heard the intentional showers self-care tool that I use. And there are these fancy, like, what do you call them? They're whiteboards that you can put up in your shower. And guys, this is a real thing. Showers are like therapeutic. Okay, shower, and in the shower, you have creative ideas. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. You have all these wonderful ideas and you get out of the shower and you can't remember anything. Yeah, I hate that. So I have like a little whiteboard with like a little waterproof pen thing in the shower, and you just write down your creative ideas. Write down whatever comes to you in the shower. And I take showers intentionally, meaning that it's a transition point for me, right? So I'm in the shower and I'm letting everything wash away, and I'm enjoying the space, the silence, the sound of the water. I'm exercising mindfulness. I'm listening to the trickle. I'm listening to, what's going on inside of my head. I'm allowing for the silence to engulf me. Like, it's an intentional space. And you can do that with anything, right? Just being mindful of the present. What is going on right now? And how can I pull everything from it to make this moment amazing in my life? So those are my sort of personal self-care tips, and there are many, many more. If you are a reader, books are fantastic. Podcasts and audiobooks work as well. And if you're a talker, if you're like a if you love to talk to people, I would say, um, I can't remember the title of the book, but it's about how to have those kinds of intentional conversations. So not the ones that you have like with your therapist or with your counselor or with your spiritual director or anything like that, but the ones that you can have with your friends who are also aware that conversations can be healing. We can have healing conversations. We can have conversations that bring relief instead of that bring us to a place where we feel more anxious. And so if you have friends, or you have, contacts, or people who are interested in the same thing as you are, who are aware, you can say, hey, let's have an intentional conversation. Let's talk about what is going on in our lives in an intentional way. Let's offer one another empathy, a listening ear, as well as a challenge to come out of our embeddedness if we're sort of stuck in a rut and become mobilized. How do we motivate and mobilize one another with our intentional conversations? So that's all I wanted to sort of share with us all this evening. Hopefully, you gained something, a little nugget. Um, I love to say this to my clients. The time that we get to spend together is like it's like a little stone or like a little pebble or like a rock. And I don't know if you guys have ever taken like a stone or a rock and thrown it like into water. Like if you throw it into a pond or the lake and it like creates ripples out, right? So this is like a little stone or rock, and your life is like the pond or the body of water. And so how do you want to take what we've done here tonight and have it ripple into your life? Right. And so I would encourage you and invite you to even just think about a takeaway or something that sort of captured your attention or something that sort of resonated with you, and hold on to it, protect it, and just keep it as your little gift, your little pebble, and allow it to sort of ripple through your life. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. I mean, wow. Those were some wonderful shares. For those of you who are just joining, thank you so much for coming into the room. We are sitting down with Genevieve. Allow Genevieve. I loved these shares. And can I say, some of these things are things that I personally, and please do share in the chat if you can, I didn't think about things like the placing that whiteboard in the shower. That's one of the last things I'm thinking about when I'm going to take a shower. So I loved the fact that you shared that. And the word intention and what that looks like for all of us. I know in a previous interview that you and I had when we sat down, you spoke about introspection, and how we look at our own mental health and where that starts from. And so much of that came up for me as you were talking. What I'd love to know, we're about to go to the floor in just a moment to see if any of you have some questions for Genevieve. I'd like to ask you, as we prepare for our Q&A, what does self-care management look like? Because that's a big question that many of us have had. What does it look like? It's so different for each person, but how do we even approach the introspection and how do we approach our own self-care management practice? How do we start it?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And when you started with the intro meaning inside into self, introspection, spection meaning investigation, right? We look at how to investigate within ourselves what is important for us, right? What is serving us? What refreshes us? Or what rejuvenates us? What revives us? What awakens us? And quite often, and I do this a lot, quite often we can identify very easily what the nots are, or what the no's are, or what the don'ts are. So I know that I don't like such and such. I know what's not working for me. But just as often, we don't take the time to figure out, hey, what is working for me? What do I like? So we could say, I don't like chocolate, but I'm not sure what I do like. Right? So the introspection part really, really is a reflection exercise that is taking the time to sit down with self and get to know the self. And we aren't necessarily encouraged or perhaps invited to do that in our social context. However, we are encouraged to be happy. This is like our cultural narrative right now. Everybody has to be happy. If it's not happy, then it needs to, we got to cancel it or throw it out the door or what have you. But the important factor in the being happy is knowing what makes you happy. It's not just a feeling that you have, right? It's about getting down to the nitty-gritty and knowing, hey, if I say no to this thing because I already have 6 things on my plate, that's going to make me happy. It may not make the other person happy, and I don't really want to make them not happy, but I got to look out for my peace of mind at this point. And so knowing that it comes out of getting to know yourself. And so people feel distressed. They're like, "Oh man, I got all these things on my plate. I don't know I feel so anxious. I feel so overwhelmed." And I think, so how many things are you doing? Oh, do you want to be doing all those things? Not really, but my friend asked me to do this thing, and my mom asked me to do this thing, and my brother asked me to do this thing, and then so what do you actually want to do? Where are you in this? And it's so important for us to get to know ourselves, or else we'll simply be rocked to and fro by the expectations and desires of others. And nobody can live with that for very long. So yeah, the introspection piece, I would say, is number one for self-care. And I want to say this. A lot of times, we don't think we're worth it. We think everybody else is worth our time. Everybody else is worth our effort. We want to help so-and-so with their project. We want to help so-and-so. But when it comes to our own stuff, we're like, we have dreams that have been sitting down on the back burner for the last 10 years. Are you not worth it? Yes, you are. I should be like the Barack Obama, the new campaign manager. Yes, you are. You are worth it, and you do deserve it, and you deserve your time just as much as everybody else that you want to give it to, that you want to offer it to. Your project deserves just as much as your time and your attention and your passion, as much as everybody else's project. Okay? And so I want you to get in touch with yourself and commit to doing the work. Because even that shift of perspective to looking in the self, at the self, is a difficult one, especially if you've grown up in a culture or a family or a context that says that is not allowed, that is not acceptable, that is not okay, or that is selfish. Putting labels on it like that. I've heard that. It's selfish for me to want to, take care of myself instead of pouring out everything into my kids or what have you. No, it's actually selfish for you to do that until the point where you're deficient and depleted and your kids can't access you. That is what I call selfish. And so take the time to look at yourself, look into yourself, get to know yourself, become aware of yourself, commit to the work of change, of transforming, of unlearning, and of reconstructing something that's more satisfying for this point in your life. I hope that answered your question. I feel like I went off on a rant there.
No, no, that was fantastic. It gives us an opportunity to really investigate our own personal and individual natural order. of things, because that natural order is going to look different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Right. That's beautiful. We have some questions for you that are lighting up in our chat, Genevieve. First, I do want to share that Kira Ford has said that she's going to buy that shower board right now. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. So thank you for that tip, Genevieve. One of the questions is, are we able to access counseling during the pandemic?
Are you able to? Yes.
Yes, that and
And
part of, I'm sorry, that question comes from a dance immersion staff member.
yes. Okay, perfect. Um, so I do have a few resources. I have them actually written down, so I'll just post them. I'll send them to, can I send them to Tamia? And you can send them out to everyone, just as it relates to therapists who are doing counseling. We're an essential service, so we do provide counseling group, individual, couples, family. I still do in-person counseling because my office is set up where I can meet provincial regulations and have, the 2 meter distance and so on, what have you. Only at one of the offices, the East End office, but I do know a lot of people who are continuing to engage online, over the phone, in person, and there are some resources that are specific to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and some specific lists like Black therapist lists where you can go and sort of look for someone who you feel as though you relate most to. I know that's been a pretty common theme in the past year or so for myself. And also spiritual directors. For many of us, our spirituality and faith are quite integral to our growth and to our strength. So spiritual direction is another sort of form of support that maybe not many people know about, but is available. And that it's similar to counseling, but it has a spiritual sort of foundation. Um, and yeah, just some books and some links to some guided journals. Guided journals are really helpful as well. They're kind of like having your own personal at-home therapist, like, or in your bag therapist, that you can sort of access at any point that you want. So, to answer your question in a really long way, yes.
Thank you so much. And I should clarify, that question came from, or to correct myself, pardon me, that question came from a member of the room, one of our participants. Thank you so much. Dance Immersion has placed that question in the chat for us. And we have another question for you. Kira Ford is asking, what are some tips you can use to not judge yourself for using some of the unhelpful thinking habits?
Okay. Tips. So maybe I'll say it like this. Unhelpful thinking styles are equivalent to the way that you talk to yourself. So you think a thought, it's like your voice in your head, or maybe somebody else's voice in your head, really. Um, and so to combat the judgmental, the temptation to judge the self, you would use the same method, which is self-talk. Okay. And so when you want to judge yourself for using unhelpful thinking styles, it's important to be able to say, the reality is those ways of thinking are normal. They are automatic. They're not something that you subscribe to and decide to do, but they are present. And so it is not your fault that you have unhelpful thinking styles. And it's also important to recognize that they are functional to some degree. There's a reason why your brain thinks in that way. Okay. And you may not discover, what the function is or what the payoff is in one day, but understand that there is some way in which that way of thinking has worked for you to do something, whether it's to survive, whether it's to cope, whatever the case might be, whether it's to protect yourself, whatever it is, that way of thinking produces something for you. And so when it becomes a way of thinking that doesn't work for you, or when you realize that it's not working for you, then you can counteract it with a way of thinking that works better for you. Okay? Does that sort of make sense? I don't know. I
Is that
can't
helpful,
tell.
Kira?
I can't tell.
Kira's giving the thumbs up. Thank you
Thumbs
so
up.
much for your question there. That's good. That's really good, Genevieve. We
You know
have
what? Maybe
more.
I'll say one more thing.
Please do.
Um, I'll say one thing about that too. Maybe I'll say it like this. You can only do what you can with what you have in the moment. I'll say it like that. Because if you don't have access to an alternative or another idea, or you're not aware that you're doing something that's unhelpful, then there is nothing else for you to do. So at this point, when you come into contact with a different way and like an awareness, then you're like, oh, okay, so I've been doing that all this time, but now I know, I'm aware that there's something else. But you can't beat up on yourself for not knowing that. Like, oh man, I'm so mad I didn't know. No, now you know, right? So you can only do you can only do what you can in the moment with what you have in the moment. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
A thumbs up from Kira. Kira, thank you again. What a great question. Thank you for that answer as well, Genevieve. As Genevieve, we have another good question. What are some small ways, this is coming from Jillian G,
Mhm.
what are some small ways that people can make their space beautiful and comfortable when they do not have much control of their environment?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. Yes. I have some little favorites, tiny little favorites. So I have some externals and some internals. So internals are like tiny little things. I don't know if you could see, you could probably not see. There's a little bonsai plant over there on the table. There's a little bonsai plant. Plants are amazing. Like just like the little plants, there's little succulents that you can like put on your windowsill. They're like really small. They don't take up a lot of space at all, but they're nice to look at and they remind you of life. Candles are another thing. If there's nobody in your house who's like that's like allergic or maybe finicky about scents, like scented candles. My favorite is the Fireside. I can't remember who makes it, but oh goodness, oh, it's just it's like heaven. If heaven is heaven, like if I go to heaven, I want to smell like this. I'm sure the angels in heaven like have this particular like candle burning. Okay, it's beautiful. And it fills the entire space with just loveliness. So candles, little plants. Um, I also like pictures. If you, I don't really draw or paint very well, but I have done, some paint nights or whatever, and just some little, things on little like dollar store canvases, just in my own little creative time. So yeah, little paintings, you can, put them up like as a bed head or like just on the wall where you can see it. Um, Coloring, if you color, you can color a little, picture and you can put it in a little frame and just sort of put it on your bedside table. Just like tiny little things that you can sort of make your space your own and reflect you. Another thing that I've totally gotten into, they're like wall decals. They're wall decals with like sayings on them. So you can put like, change your thoughts to change your world, or like if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, like any kind of inspiring words. And they're like little stickers pretty much that go up on the wall. And they're very easy that you can peel them off or put them on. But they can inspire you and make your space your own. Does that sort of help? Those are just some like little things that I've done like in my own little space.
Jillian's giving the thumbs up.
Yeah,
That's really good. Making your space your own. What can we do to make ourselves happy and to promote that joy
yeah,
within?
little
Right.
things.
Right. I love that. Thank you for that question, Jillian. And we have another coming from a participant in the room, Genevieve. What is a guided journal? Is the question. Can you share?
Journals. My good. Oh, I don't have any on my desk right now, do I? No, I don't. So I don't have any on my desk right now. Guided journals are journals that do I have? I'm actually creating some guided journals right now. So I'm in the process of building out my own, which are totally amazing, not because I made them, but because they are. But they are journals that help you to access the deeper levels of you. So they help you to navigate your self-awareness process, or they can help you to navigate your thought process, right? They can help you to be intentional and to be consistent about a particular process. Okay, so each day, like a regular journal, they have pages, but each day will have like a thought question or a self-awareness question or an exercise that you can do, like write down 3 things you're grateful for, or write down the name of somebody that you need to forgive, probably yourself. Just sort of do different types of self-awareness and healing actions, activities, and engagements. And it guides you so that you don't have to come up with stuff yourself. And you don't have to go see a therapist every day. Like it's kind of like your own like in-pocket therapist. They're quite amazing. And they have them for different subjects. So there's like, I don't know if maybe I'll say this. CBT is a form of therapy. It's sort of a therapeutic orientation. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And so it deals with how our thoughts influence our emotions, which influence our behaviors. And it attempts to help us become conscious of that interaction and to develop a framework where we can sort of do the things and think in the ways that we want to. So there are guided journals for CBT, and they'll ask you CBT questions like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you feeling? And, stuff like that. So they're really, really great. Amazon, I've gotten a few on Amazon. There's some for like anxiety, if you're struggling with anxiety, just sort of, I can't remember. I think it's the big book. Oh, the big book for anxious people or something like that. Anyway, if you go on Amazon, you'll see it. And give me, what are we in, January 28th? Give me exactly 90 days and you'll be able to go to my website and get mine.
Thank you, Genevieve. And Genevieve, I know we have just a few minutes left, but before we go today, we want to remind individuals where they can find you. So we have a few more questions that are coming in, but before I read those, where can individuals find you online, your website?
Yeah, catch me outside. No, I'm kidding. You can find you can you can find me at cornercounselor.com, 2 L's. Or you can email me at cornercounselor@gmail.com. Where else can you find me? You can catch me on IG, at Corner Counselor on IG. I'm on Facebook too, and YouTube, and all those other platforms. I really don't go on there that much, to be very honest. If I'm just throw that out there, but I'm on there. If you send me a message, I'll eventually get to it. We can connect.
Okay, I love it. I love it. We'll remind folks before we leave again today, when you were talking, Genevieve, about self-care and talking about the management piece and talking about this very big animal, as it appears for many of us, the reflection piece is something I think is so key. Again, coming back to that natural order and really taking a look at ourselves and what works for us individually. That's huge. That's huge. I want to now go to another question from Jillian G. How do you help someone that is focused on making others happy begin to recognize that they need to focus on what makes them happy?
Okay. So you're the support person in the situation. You see what's happening, and the other person doesn't see what's happening. Um, so that is a very common um, hmm, approach, let's say, to life when we are not in a position to deal with our own problems or to deal with our own stuff. So it's a form of denial, right? We are attending to others, always taking care of others. We're in other people's stuff. We're trying to make other people feel good. We're trying to make other people happy, but we're not looking at ourselves. And it may be that we don't feel equipped or ready to deal with our own stuff. It may be that we don't feel like we have the support or the tools to deal with our own stuff. Um, and we are going to stay in denial until we feel ready. Like that's just sort of a reality. And I mean, you could say, hey, you're in denial and you need to deal with your stuff, or you need to focus on making yourself happy. But that likely won't work. We are we are humans and we have to go through our own process. And those realizations have to come from ourselves, because if we don't own the process, then we can't authenticate the process. And if we can't authenticate the process, then it won't be sustainable, right? Because I can't do your work for you. You can't do my work for me. That's why, it's sort of an individual journey to self-awareness, right? I can't be like you awareness and then superimpose my awareness of you onto yourself. Like, it's just, there's no way to do that. If you're a praying person, pray for them. And if they are a good friend and they are willing to hear you out, then you may suggest to them that maybe seeing someone could help, or you can ask them. I mean, if I sort of saw that in a friend, I'd probably sit with them and ask them some serious questions, and come from a place of heart, right? Like, you know I see and notice something, and it's somewhat concerning for me. And I just want to ask you, it's not about being defensive or not about judging. It's not about calling you out or anything, but, I am concerned for you as a friend, and go from there, see what happens.
Thank you. Wow, that time went by so quickly. We are
Time to-
almost out of time. We have just a few minutes left. I know that there is one more question that we have to Dance Immersion. Do I have time to present that question to? I do. Thank you so much. Thank you to Dance Immersion's wonderful program director, Tamia Wharton-Surrey. Thank you. The question is, are there guided journal resources for children and youth that you can recommend, Genevieve?
Uh, I have, it's really funny. Um, I just literally 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I got, like, someone sent me something about children and youth, like, books of some sort. I don't know exactly what they are because I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but I feel like they're related to that. Um, so I will add that to. I'll just look it up, and then I'll add that to my list of resources that I'm going to send out. And that's guided journals for youth. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yes. Guided journals for you.
Yeah. I know of there's a coloring book. I don't remember her name, but I'll get that too. But she does a coloring book that's similar, and for self-care, for therapeutic purposes, and that's suitable for children. So I'll get her name as well.
Okay, Genevieve, I have to tell you, I have to echo your words. I felt like I got a warm hug
Oh,
today with all of the information that you shared. Today was insightful, and I think that it's really important for us to continue these conversations. To those of you in the room, did this speak to you? Did this speak to you? Feel free to drop your comments. Thank you. I'm seeing some nods. It really spoke to me as well today. Thank you. Thanks for those comments, everyone.
absolutely.
And thank you again to you, Genevieve, for sharing so graciously and so openly. A tough time sometimes to have these conversations, especially
Mhm.
when we think about some of the things that impact our bodies, um, that we don't speak about when it comes to our own mental health or wellness. So thank you for sharing so openly. We appreciate you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And thank you to Dance Immersion. Thank you, Dance Immersion, for opening the floor, creating this space for us to talk, to share, to love on one another. We really want to appreciate you and want to invite all of you who joined us today to visit Dance Immersion on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and head over to Dance Immersion's website, danceimmersion.ca, to stay up to date on the offerings of the organization. And we invite you as well, while you're there, why not sign up for the biweekly newsletter? Because then you'll have an opportunity to keep up to date on further offerings. So before I pass over to our program director, Dance Immersion's program director, Tamia Wharton-Surrey, thank you again for joining us, sending you messages of love and peace. Stay safe and stay well. Over to you. Thank you, Tamia Wharton-Surrey. Over to you.
Thank you. I won't keep you all long, but I wanted to thank Genevieve. Of course, this was, as Nicole said, so insightful, helpful, thought-provoking, all the wonderful things. And you really made it feel like, we went through that list of 10 things and you're going, oh my gosh, I do number 3, number 7, number 8, number 9, and it's all my parents' fault. And, you start to get wound up. But then as you spoke, you could really feel like this was common, it's a normal thing, and there's ways to cope and ways to get out of those methods of thinking. So it really felt achievable. So thank you. And thank you, Nicole, for your wonderful moderation as usual. And to everybody here for sharing so openly. And this is what the Bantaba are for. I'm sure we're going to have Geneviève back because we can go further and there's so much to talk about. So thank you all again. I will send out Geneviève's resources to everybody who was registered. It might be next week sometime. And if you do visit Dance Immersion's website, we have a resources page, and corner counselors right at the top there if you want to click on that. So thank you again, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now.